Saudi Arabia's planned mega city at a cost of some $500 billion is a key part of the kingdom's Vision 2030 plan.
For Saudi Arabia, the biggest oil exporter in the world, the drop in oil revenues has left a big hole in its budget.
It's a fact that Saudi Arabia is gradually running out of money. I mean, they'll be the first to acknowledge that the sovereign wealth fund has been reduced. It's somewhere below $500 billion.
The $500 billion project is part of efforts to free the kingdom from its dependence on oil.
Hi everybody, on 10th of January 2021, the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made the grand announcement for the plan of the Lion City of Saudi Arabia. And this is by far one of the craziest projects ever witnessed by mankind. And while most people are fascinated by the grandeur of the Neom city, what we fail to see is that this is Saudi Arabia's desperate attempt to cope up with an economic nightmare. Yes, you heard that right. One of the richest nations in the world is facing an economic nightmare that is hidden in plain sight. The question is, what is this hidden problem with Saudi Arabia? What is this Neom or Lion City all about? How is Neom meant to rescue Saudi Arabia? And why do people think Neom is meant to fail the state of Saudi Arabia? But before we move on, I want to tell you about an innovation from India who are our partners of today's episode, and that is Multipl. People, when it comes to our spending for travel, for an iPhone or those Nike shoes, we usually end up spending from our bank savings or on credit. But this is an Indian fintech app that is asking us to not save but to invest for our spends. Let me introduce you to world's first and only invest to spend app, which is Multipl. Multipl is a SEBI registered investment advisory that enables you to invest in a personalized way for all your big expenses such as travel, gadgets, wedding, home appliances and shopping. Basically everything. By doing so, you earn investment returns before you spend. Also, not only you invest, top brands of India co-invest with you. So every month your savings get multiplied with the dual benefit of returns and brand co-investments. Overall, you can get up to 25% more earnings on your purchase with Multipl. So if this sounds useful to you, download the Multipl app from the link in the description. To understand the importance of the vision of the Neom city, we first have to understand the economic scenario of Saudi Arabia. You see guys, the core reason why Saudi Arabia is super powerful is because it is the second largest producer of oil in the world, and more importantly, it also has the second largest oil reserve in the world. And lastly, in terms of trade and security, it has a security guarantee from the United States and is the leader of the oil monopoly group of OPEC. Now the question over here is, when Saudi has so much oil and is also the leader of the OPEC, why exactly are they in trouble? So by the look of it, it looks like Saudi Arabia is a super rich, super chill country, isn't it? Well, guess what? Here are the most disastrous economic parameters that most people don't know about Saudi Arabia. Firstly, if you look at this graph, this is a representation of the global oil prices, and this red line that you see, it indicates the price point at which Saudi Arabia can actually break even. And here you can see that since 2015, the oil prices have never crossed the break-even point at all. And assuming that the break-even point is still the same, it is only in the past 2 years, post-COVID and after the Russian invasion, that Saudis are profiting from oil trade. And that is because the oil prices have shot up. This is the reason why the Saudis wouldn't hesitate to support Russia to keep the war going. Secondly, if you remember from our Qatar video, this graph by British Petroleum clearly says that considering the fact that 4 out of the 6 biggest oil buyers in the world intend to achieve net zero targets by 2050, the demand for oil will slow down by 71%. Meanwhile, as you can see from this graph, the cost of renewable energy has already started dropping below the fossil fuel levels. So with 46% of Saudi Arabia's GDP coming from oil itself, by 2050, when the oil price drops below $50 a barrel, it will no longer be viable for Saudi Arabia to sustain on oil. This is the second and the most obvious problem for Saudi Arabia. The third problem that they have is their growing domestic economic indicators. And you will be shocked to know that as of 2020, although Saudi had 65% of its population under the age of 30, although 58% of this population had a college degree, 63% of its population under 30 was unemployed. So you see, unlike other countries, Saudi has an educated but unemployed population. So the bigger problem over here is no social scheme can actually fix it. These are the three major problems faced by Saudi Arabia, which are no or very less profit from oil, which forms 46% of its GDP, slowing oil demand, the rise of renewable energy, and lastly, a severe dearth in opportunities for the youth of Saudi Arabia. So in short, Saudi Arabia desperately needs a diversification project that can make it economically viable in the future and will give future opportunities to the citizens of Saudi Arabia. This is one of the most important reasons why, ladies and gentlemen, Mohammed bin Salman came up with the grand plan of the Neom city. And as this announcement was made, the entire world was shocked to see the cost, grandeur, audacity, and the vision of Mohammed bin Salman.
Neom, the most ambitious project on Earth.
Neom has been billed as humanity's next chapter.
In October 2017, His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman revealed his vision for a new future.
مثل الفرق بين هذا الهاتف وبين هذا الهاتف. هذا ما سوف نعمله داخل نيوم.
Neom. Massive size, 170 kilometers.
No cars, no roads.
Launching and breaking ground on the world's most revolutionary cities and destinations.
Neom is building what the world's been waiting for.
So the question is, what is this Neom city all about? You see guys, Neom is nothing but a huge city which will stretch from the Red Sea to the city of Tabuk. And the peculiarity of this project is that this city will only be 200 meters wide, but 170 kilometers long and 500 meters above the sea level. And Neom will eventually accommodate 9 million people and will be built on a footprint of just 34 square kilometers. And the features of this city will blow your mind. Number one, all essential daily needs can be met within 5 minutes of walking from any corner of the city, which will completely reduce the dependency on transport. And the goal is to have 0 cars in the city. Secondly, the city transport system will be seamlessly integrated with artificial intelligence. Thirdly, it will have no roads, no cars, no emissions, and will run on 100% renewable energy sources. And lastly, Neom will produce over 600,000 tons of sustainable food to help Saudi achieve self-sufficiency with food. Now the question over here is, why would someone build a city in the middle of a freaking desert, and that too in such a weird line format? So what exactly is the thought behind this project? Well, the first and perhaps the most important factor is its geography. So you see, the Neom city will lie along Saudi Arabia's Red Sea coastline, adjacent to the beautiful views of Gulf of Aqaba and near the Suez Canal, where maritime trade routes exist. And this is not some ordinary location at all. This is by far one of the most valuable locations in the world. Why? Because as of 2021, approximately 12% of the entire global trade passed through the Suez Canal. And this represents 30% of all global container traffic and over $1 trillion worth of goods per annum. Also, this location falls at the center of 3 continents, which are Asia, Europe, and Africa. And more importantly, the Neom city is located in such a strategic location that it can be reached by an 8-hour flight by 70% of the world's population. This is what makes it the perfect location to build an air transshipment hub. So as the oil price drops further and aviation fuel becomes cheaper, air cargo will become cheaper. So if they build a high-grade facility to board and manage air traffic, it's going to be a very solid stream of income for Saudi Arabia. This is where we have something called the Neom Bay Airport, which has already been opened up. Secondly, the topography and climatic characteristics of the Neom area have a unique blend of pristine nature, dramatic mountain backdrops which are covered with snow during winter, uninterrupted coastline with untouched beaches and coral reefs, several spectacular islands, peaceful deserts, mild temperatures, Red Sea breezes, and above all are the beautiful views across the Gulf of Aqaba and the Red Sea. This is what makes the Line City one of the most valuable tourist destinations in the world, provided the tourism ecosystem is set up. And this is the reason why we have something called Trojana project, and this will be a year-round tourism destination with a man-made freshwater lake. On top of that, Trojana will have a natural reserve, hiking routes, mountain hiking trails, and even water sports that will take place on this man-made freshwater lake. And then we have something called Qiddiya. And this project is all about entertainment. It includes a Six Flags theme park, a golf course, an arts complex, and even one of the largest water theme parks in the world. Similarly, they have the Jeddah Tower coming up, which will be the world's tallest building that's going to be taller than Burj Khalifa. And by 2030, Qiddiya hopes to draw up to 17 million visitors annually. And now, to accommodate these tourists and other ultra-rich people, there are some massive projects like the Red Sea project that will comprise of 50 resorts offering up to 8,000 hotel rooms and more than 1,000 residential properties across 22 islands and 6 inland sites. This entire project will also feature mountain canyons, dormant volcanoes and ancient cultural heritage sites. So in total, it is expected to generate 22 billion riyals or $5.85 billion of revenue annually by 2030 and 464 billion riyals or $123 billion in cumulative revenue throughout its construction cycle and its 10 years of steady operation by 2040. On top of that, it is also expected to support 70,000 jobs by 2040. And just like this, they also have something called the Amala project, which will add 2,500 hotels, 700 private residential villas, along with a retail area featuring 200 outlets. And again, they also have multiple projects to create employment and diversify Saudi's economy to prevent itself from sinking. Here's where we have the final element of the Neom city, which is business and the vision of turning Neom into a world-class business hub. In simple words, just like in Dubai, businesses will be given tax rebates so that they can set up their hubs in Neom, and when 10 years down the line, when Saudi Arabia charges them taxes, Saudi Arabia can make money out of corporate taxes. This is pretty basic, so let's not get into this. And if you want to know more about investments and investment opportunities in Saudi Arabia, I'll attach a Deloitte document to help you understand all the business opportunities in the Neom city. So do have a look at it and let me know what you think. So long story short, this project's total area is slated to be 26,500 kilometers and will link Jordan and Egypt via Saudi territory. Eventually, it is expected to generate 380,000 jobs and contribute $48 billion to the kingdom's GDP by 2030. This is the grand diversification plan of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this looks like a promising project, right? Saudi has a ton of money and has some of the richest people like Maishi Son and powerful companies like Blackstone backing up, and more importantly, it is being fueled by the booming oil economy of 2022. So this is fantastic, isn't it? Well, unfortunately, things are not so good for Saudi Arabia. The question is, why? Well, firstly, the website very boldly says that it's going to have 100% renewable energy sources powering the entire city, and it will also be food sufficient. But the sad fact is that Saudi Arabia, as of 2020, imported 80% of its food from 157 countries. In fact, Saudi is so far away from food self-sufficiency that the Saudi government is now buying and leasing lands in other countries, and they're also buying agricultural companies from all across the world just so that they can import food from those locations and have food security in Saudi Arabia. And this is because of the massive water shortage problem that Saudi has. And this water shortage is again the second point of skepticism. Did you know that there are only 18 countries in the world that do not have rivers, and most of these countries are small island countries? But Saudi Arabia is so huge that it's almost 60% of the size of India. But even then, Saudi Arabia literally does not have a single river at all.
Saudi Arabia runs on two fluids, water and oil.
सऊदी अरब में पानी की तलब हर गुजरते साल के साथ 7% बढ़ रही है.
Overuse, demographic and economic pressure could push Saudi Arabia's water supply to its limit.
The Middle East is rich in oil reserves, providing a huge amount of the world's energy. But what it has in abundance in hydrocarbons, it lacks in a critical resource that is growing scarcer by the year: water.
Now imagine, even in a country like India with 400 rivers, in a state like Maharashtra, we still face water shortages.
And there's no solution to the water crisis in Maharashtra. Somewhere people are drinking dirty water.
There is, well, a massive water crisis in other parts. So there's a massive water crisis that is being reported in Maharashtra.
महाराष्ट्र के एक दो नहीं, लगभग 169 गांव के 58,000 लोगों की हालत यही है.
People are fighting amongst themselves for a pot of water the moment the tanker arrives.
Now can you imagine how would it be if half of India did not have a single river at all? And as you can clearly see in this 3D drawing, even the population of Saudi is so unevenly distributed that here you can see that the majority of the people live near the sea, and except for Riyadh, there is no other area with a dense population. And currently, the way they are fulfilling more than 50% of their water requirement is by a process called water desalination. And the problem with this process is that it is extremely toxic and requires a lot of oil, which leads to a lot of carbon emissions, which is against the very principles of Neom city. And currently, Saudi Arabia's desalination plants produce about 31.5 million cubic meters of contaminated water each day. That volume of liquid is equivalent to about 20 million barrels of oil per day. And most of this is pumped back into the ocean, which again leads to massive pollution. Saudi Arabia is also classified as one of the most water-scarce nations on the planet. And you'll be shocked to know that the absolute water scarcity level is said to be 500 cubic meters per capita. But Saudi Arabia only has 89.5 cubic meters per capita per year. So let alone food sufficiency, how will Neom achieve water sufficiency using clean methods? That itself is a big question. And while most people think desalination can be done using renewable energy, the harsh truth is that as of now, it's extremely difficult and almost impossible. And lastly, while Saudi aims for 50% of the electricity to be generated with renewable energy by 2030, only about 0.1% of electricity was generated this way in 2019. Now most people might say, yeah bro, so what? What if they don't go green? They can still use oil to grow their business for investors, no? Well, that's not really possible, guys. Why? Because beyond 2040, we'll be seeing the rise of something called carbon border tax. Which means, if you are emitting carbon emissions beyond, let's say, 100 million tons, then whatever goods or services that you are going to offer in the market will incur a carbon tax. For example, if you produce 1 ton of steel costing $600, then on top of this $600 price tag, you will incur an $89 per ton carbon tax when you ship this to Canada. This will soon be applicable for all goods and services. So by default, due to carbon emissions, your product and service will become extremely costly in the international market. So no company or investment fund would like to invest in a place that cannot go green. This is the reason why people say Saudi claims are not backed up by practical plan of actions and $500 billion of investment might just be a distant dream. On top of that, another looming threat for Saudi Arabia is its debt problem. You see, as the world's largest oil producer, Saudi Arabia traditionally has had no need to borrow money at all. But since 2015, as the oil prices dropped below the break-even point, you will see that Saudi Arabia has been accumulating more and more debt. And it's only after COVID recovery and the Russia-Ukraine war that Saudi's debt to GDP ratio has actually started dropping down. And like I said, this is because of the increase in oil prices. On top of that, if you look at their foreign reserves, they have depleted by a massive margin after the oil prices went down. This is how sensitive the Saudi economy is. So if trillions of dollars are needed to fund the Vision 2030 projects, and if any of them go wrong, it's going to cost Saudi both money and reputation, both of which they cannot afford to play with as the world becomes oil-free. This is the story, vision, vulnerability and the situation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its quest for the Line City project. And this brings me to the last part of the episode, and that are the study materials to help you understand the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, its vision and its situation better. Moving on to the study materials, the first thing I'm attaching is a doc from the Middle East Eye to help you understand the Saudi economy using graphs. Secondly, I am attaching the Neom City PDF to help you understand the vision of MBS and the business opportunities over there. And lastly, I am attaching a THINKSCHOOL playlist to help you understand the ongoing geopolitics around the kingdom to give you a better context of their strength and weaknesses. So do have a look at them and let me know what you think. That's all from my side today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. And please don't forget to check out Multipl, that is a made in India app that helps you invest for your spends from the link in the description.